Benefits of wholesome desire. People who apply wholesome desire chanda as the motivation for action, on the other hand, wish for the direct results of actions, and therefore they also want to act. The consequences of wholesome desire are opposite to the consequences of craving. Wholesome desire leads to upright behavior, diligence and honesty, to sincerity in relation to one's work, and to a steadfast allegiance to the natural law of causality. Wholesome desire creates an enthusiasm for work. It leads to precision and excellence in relation to one's work, to a wish for success, to earnest endeavour, and to being undaunted by work. Instead of a complicated system of control and mutual fault-finding, there is cooperation and a coordinated effort between people, because each individual wishes for the success of the work rather than yearning for personally gratifying objects, which are scarce and must be competed for. Because the action is performed for its own direct results, the value of the action can be measured by its results. There is a balance between the action and the undesired results. A person acts in order to give rise to beneficial results. For example, one eats the proper amount of meat. One eats the proper amount to meet the needs of the body and to promote health without being enslaved by delicious flavors. When one desires the direct results of an action and wants to generate these results, one also realizes the intermediate benefits that arise during the course of action. The wish to act and the reaping of the benefits from action leads to satisfaction, contentment, happiness, and a deep sense of peace. In the context of Dhamma practice, chanda is classified as one of the paths to power iddhipada, which is a vital principle for the development of concentration, samadhi. Wholesome desire brings about concentration, which the Buddha called concentration as a result of desire, chanda samadhi. Wholesome desire promotes mental health as opposed to craving, which creates mental illness. Even in the case when a person is unable to fully accomplish the results of an action, wholesome desire does not create suffering or mental problems. Whether the action bears fruit or not, it proceeds according to cause and effect. The effects are consistent with the causes along with any obstructing conditions naturally give rise to specific results. Wholesome desire does not create suffering because those people who act with such desire have an understanding of causality and recognize the direct results of their actions. Suffering only arises when craving gives the opportunity to interfere. For example, when one worries that people will be critical for not succeeding, or one compares one's accomplishments with the success of others. The act of eating subject to preconditions. Following are some everyday examples of these principles. When the body is underfed, then it requires food for nourishment and for sustaining life. The need for food manifests as hunger, which we can distinguish as the first stage in the act of eating. Hunger is a function of the body and is classified as a result, vipaka. From the perspective of ethics, it is neutral, neither good nor bad, neither wholesome nor unwholesome. Even arahants experience hunger. Hunger is a stimulus, it prompts the act of eating, and it conditions the behavior of eating. If one is very hungry, one eats a lot. If not very hungry, one eats less. Hunger, however, is not the sole conditioning factor for eating. There are other reasons why people eat. At the second stage of eating, for ordinary unawakened beings, another incentive or motivation comes into play and determines behavior along with hunger, the force of craving. There are two kinds of craving that manifest at this stage. First is the struggle to protect the security of the self, the craving for existence, bhavatanha, which is obvious in times of great hunger or starvation. Craving generates anxiety, agitation, and fear of death, accompanying the normal discomforts of going without food. The stress and fear will be commensurate to the degree of craving. At this point, the person seeks food. When craving directs behavior, the search for food tends to be desperate and disregards ethical considerations. The second kind of craving is the craving for sense pleasures, kamatanha. The hunger for delightful sensations, the craving for sense pleasures combines with physical hunger to condition behavior, either as a support or as an obstruction. This is similar to two people who are in competition for material gains. If both gain, they help each other. If only one party gains, they are in conflict. If hunger is the sole factor, then the degree of hunger determines the amount of food a person eats. If craving is the sole factor, then the degree of delicious flavors determines the amount of food consumed. This, however, is only a hypothetical argument. Usually, craving never allows hunger to be the sole determining factor. Craving almost always intervenes, and when hunger and craving exist as co-determinants, hunger obliges craving by helping to enhance the experience of delicious flavors. But hunger can only help to a limited extent. It cannot always accommodate the desires of craving. As a consequence, a person may be very hungry, but the food is not tasty and he eats too little. Or he is not hungry, but the food is delicious and he overeats. Or he is only a little bit hungry and the food is not tasty, so he refuses to eat anything. Hunger is a warning, announcing the body's requirements. When a person eats to satisfy hunger, then the body receives adequate nourishment. The direct result of eating is nourishing the body. When a person eats with craving, eats to experience delicious flavors, then he sometimes eats too little, and other times too much, which can harm the body. In the case of craving, tasting delicious flavors is dependent on the act of eating, but it is not a direct result. Eating is the direct cause for nourishing the body, but it is a prerequisite for the gratification of craving. Craving does not necessarily want to eat, nor is it particularly interested in the needs of the body. Craving only wants delicious flavors. Eating is merely a requirement to obtain these flavors, and there is no other option but to eat. The tastier the food, the more one eats. One does not consider the body's needs and limitations. Similarly, if the food does not taste good, one refuses to eat. Moreover, one may feel that the entire process of chewing and swallowing is troubling, disagreeable, and exhausting. In this case, the body is a recipient of the act of eating, but without the person necessarily intending to nourish the body. Figuratively speaking, the living body is one party in a discussion, while the person eating with craving is another party. When the body is undernourished, it requires food, but it cannot eat on its own. It relies on the person to provide it with food. When people are inattentive to the body's needs, or only grudgingly take an interest in a proper diet, the body suffers. Occasionally, when the body is famished, it must complain and grumble in order to get people's attention. When the body sends the slightest sign of distress, people hasten to eat. The body looks for ways to entice people to eat by offering the reward of experiencing delicious tastes. And sometimes the body is not hungry and does not send any signal of discomfort. But people come across delicious food and eat more than the body requires. Eating has implications for both parties. For the body, eating results in a rejuvenation, while for the person, eating results in obtaining delicious flavors. In fact, most people do not want to eat, they only want to experience delicious tastes. If someone were required to eat 2 plates of insipid food, he would have to force himself to do so. But if the food were delicious, then he may not be able to wait for the 3rd plate to arrive. When the body offers an incentive for people to eat, he simply waits. People will eat delicious foods from their own initiative, and the body obtains required nourishment accordingly. This method of enticement by the body, however, can be harmful and backfire. If one lacks the ability to consider and reflect, one may be utterly deceived by the body and only search for desirable flavors. As a consequence, the body suffers. Sometimes one does not eat enough because the food is not delicious. Sometimes the food is tasty, but one not only eats more than is necessary, but overeats to the extent of causing illness. The act of eating, then, does not provide the suitable result of attending to the body's needs. Moreover, those people who are enticed by delicious flavors often create trouble and distress for other people.